This is the Free Grace International Podcast. freegrace.in.
Welcome to the Free Grace International Podcast. I'm Kristah Kitchen, writer for freegrace.in, and this is Lucas Kitchen, editor and content master
of
freegrace.in. I made up that last one.
Content, what did you say? Master?
Master.
Okay. Well, that's
I think
good.
you get to be content master whenever the bulk of the content was created by you.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So you may not be master for forever.
Yeah, well, you're picking up. You're writing more than I am lately. Well, I'm writing books. I mean, I'm working on things I haven't put on the website. But when I'm ready, it'll be like 500,000 words ready to blast off.
I have no hopes of catching up.
You know, if I was the content master, I could probably make our neighbor stop mowing his lawn right now. Because I don't know if you can hear it on the mic, but I can hear our studios in our backyard. I can hear one of the neighbors mowing on Thursday at 9:30 a.m. It's like, must be retired.
They're on a schedule. We just don't know what it is.
We don't know what it is. Yeah.
Let's jot this down so we remember.
It's a Mars schedule.
Anyway. All right. Well, we've got some things to talk about today.
I hope so, because this is going to be an awkward hour if there's nothing to talk about.
Well, one of the things that I thought would be cool to talk about is a chapter from the book Things Above that you wrote.
Yeah, I went back and read it because I wrote it a few years ago, and I thought maybe it'd be good if I had some awareness of what was going on. So yeah, I looked over it. Seemed like decent advice, I guess. Mm-hmm. What did you think of it?
Yeah, it was good advice for sure.
I spotted a few typos, but
you did.
They're my own.
Always a few typos.
Yeah.
I feel like they sneak in there while you're asleep or something.
Well, I'll tell you my theory on it is that there's a brain smoothing process that I do if I'm still kind of familiar with a chapter. If I just wrote it within like the last 6 months to a year, when I read it, I still kind of remember the flow and I kind of remember what I was trying to say. So the longer you take between reading it, like if you read it later, you'll often spot the typos that you didn't see in the first place.
Yeah.
It's kind of an odd thing. That's not the point.
No.
But
well, the point of this whole book that you wrote, Things Above, is kind of covers Colossians, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's a verse by verse study on Colossians. Now, what I did with it is I wrote it as I was preaching through Colossians at Shreveport Bible Church. If there's any of you guys listening that are from the former Shreveport Bible Church, I just want to say I love you, and we sure do miss you guys. Mm-hmm. We preached there for a few years and moved on to different things now, but I still think of those years as really fond times. But while I was there, before I go down this nostalgic rabbit trail, so we preached through Colossians. I think it might have been the only book I actually finished preaching through while I was there. I started a few and then would kind of trail off. Started Judges at one point, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is really like R-rated. And then the pandemic hit, and I was like, okay, well, it's too bad that the pandemic hit, but thank you for rescuing me from that decision.
Well, we needed a lighter, more encouraging, uplifting note during the pandemic, not death and gore.
Yeah, he buried his blade in Ehud's belly or whatever it was. So anyway, so Things Above, it's a kind of a walk through Colossians. Now, it's not like a commentary. There's great commentaries out there that are very in-depth. This is more like, share a story, talk about what it seems to be saying, that sort of stuff. So it's kind of at a sermon level. It's an easy book to read. Even my mom told me she enjoyed it, so I think that means that we did okay. If mom likes it, then we... That makes it sound like she's really hard to please. She reads everything we do, and she proofreads it for us. And,
but she seemed to
like this one in
genuinely,
particular.
As far as like Bible studies go, I think she viewed it more as a Bible study.
Yeah,
and she
I think so.
Liked it a lot. And I thought it was good because you were preaching through it. There was kind of a specific takeaway from each.
I believe in, I guess, what we would call one-point preaching. And what that means is like, every sermon ought to have one very simple point, because people are going to walk out and they're going to probably remember one thing. And so on this series, I had been reading some books about kind of rhetoric, oddly. And so what I had been studying was making sticky phrases or sticky statements. And a lot of times that means a little one-liner that either rhymes or it has a clever wordplay in it or something like that. And so what I tried to do with this book was make each chapter have one clear, obvious purpose, and that be something that was easy to remember with some kind of clever little phrase. And so what that does when you're preaching, if you happen to be a preacher out there, I don't have like decades of experience, but I have a little bit of experience with it. My take on it was, if you can still do this even if you're preaching verse by verse, but you have to pick the verses with some forethought. Like if you pick, I'm just going to do all of chapter 1 of Colossians, well, there's more than one point in that whole section.
Yeah.
So you kind of choose the verses you're going to do based on how much, as you read it, how much of this seems like it could fall under one umbrella at a time. So that was kind of the approach with that, and I think it worked well. I think it turned out okay.
So we are actually going to talk about just one specific
Let's talk about
chapter
one
in this
specific
book.
chapter,
But
yeah.
before we jump into that, on our website, freegrace.in, you can, if you're a pastor or a teacher, you have access to the slides, right, from this?
Yeah, we call it the Preacher's Bundle. The idea is that, we put this stuff together and we just want to share it for free with people. So in the Preacher's Bundle, you can get that through our store, but store is a misnomer. It's free. You can download it for free. But in it, it's got the slides. It's got some sermon graphics, some basic sermon graphics, some slide backgrounds if you want to make your own slides. It's got the book. It's got a preaching schedule, which I thought was pretty cool, with little QR codes that will lead you to the sermons that we did. I say we because you were in one of these. I don't know if you remember.
Right.
On the one on marriage.
The wives submitting.
So anyway, there's various things for preachers, but even if you're not a preacher, I think the book itself is a pretty simple read for the average person, because that's who it's designed for.
Yeah.
So you can get all that and more at the website.
So let's talk about the chapter on obedience. It's called Obey, and it's covering the verses about children obey your parents.
Yeah.
So it was I thought a good chapter on thinking not only if you have young children, but also as an adult child.
Yeah.
What your responsibility is in obeying your parents, and then as a parent, how to train your children to obey.
Yeah. Well, I think one thing that struck me as I was working on this book was that the verse that says, "Children, obey your parents." It's really tempting for the parents to look at that verse and kind of bury their child's nose in that verse and say, "See, you're supposed to do this." But that verse isn't written to parents; it's written to the children, And so it doesn't say parents force your kids to obey. It says, this is your responsibility as a child. And by the way, that responsibility doesn't end when you become an adult. The relationship changes and the expectations change a bit, but we're still supposed to obey our parents to the extent that it doesn't violate our primary priorities, which is my family and my marriage. If my parents ask me to do something that isn't sin and it doesn't violate my primary responsibilities, that's something I ought to try to do. Now, a good, healthy parent generally is not giving their adult children commands,
right?
But it's something that we're still expected to do. It's something that, God has set up this system to operate well, and and so I kind of couple this with this obey, for the children to obey, with what it also says to parents about not exasperating your kids, not overdoing it, and so
fathers do not provoke your children.
Don't provoke. That's the word I was looking for. Yeah, don't provoke your children. So it's kind of a reminder for the parents that, as your kids get older, maybe stop bossing them around, and that's my general my general model for parenting. Our kids are still fairly young, but I picked this up somewhere and wasn't able to give credit for it because I don't know where I got it. Maybe like James Dobson or something like that. But as our kids get older, we give them more and more control of themselves. And there's some parents that try to invert that, where they don't lift a hand when they're young, but then when their kids start getting wild as they get older, then they start trying to control and restrict, and it backfires. It's a real mess. And so the book talks a bit about how we ought to be releasing our children into controlling their own lives, or managing their own lives. I preached this a while back, and a guy came to me afterwards and he said, I don't know about that, because as my teenage daughter is growing up, she seems to need me more and more. And I didn't have a good response for it at the time, but as I've thought about that, I've gone back to that comment a number of times. As I thought about that, what I should have said is that the way that she needs you is shifting over time. So she probably needs you more as a confidant now, as a friend, as an advisor, and so our role changes over time. And it doesn't mean that kids completely stop needing us. But what I'm talking about in the chapter is controlling. And we ought to be able to, as our children grow, to release the control that we are, so dying to have on their lives as they get older. Because if we don't, it's going to backfire, and it'll even hurt them in the long run. So
yeah, we want them to be independent, to grow towards independence, and not to be totally dependent on us. But I think a lot of kids get the advice of just be yourself when it comes to hard situations and things like that. And so as a parent, what do we do with that?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you one thought that I've had since I wrote the book. This isn't in the book, but that raising a child, have you ever had, I'm sure you have, because I think we've talked about it. Have you ever had somebody say, who doesn't have kids, but they talk about their dogs as if they're kids. Yeah. These are what do they call fur babies or whatever. Yeah, I get it. That's something important in their life, and I understand. But there is a fundamental difference between raising a dog and having a dog and raising children. With a dog, you are in a relationship where that dog will always need you.
Yeah.
He will always need you to feed him. He will always need you to groom him if you're a groomer, whatever it is. The relationship is always one of codependence with a dog. With a child, you are raising them not to need you. It's the exact opposite.
Yeah.
I'm trying to raise my kids so that they don't need me, so that when I die, their life doesn't fall apart. Or when they get married to someone who hates me. I don't want that to happen, but if it did, I want them to still be able to function, because I've taught them to be independent, and I've taught them to be able to manage their life. Now, I hope they marry people that love us.
Yes, please.
Your eyes kind of got big when I said that. I know. But I'm just saying, we don't know what will happen.
Right.
We need to prepare them for whatever could happen. And so that's really different than a dog. We don't want to raise children that always need us. However, there is a temptation with parents to raise children that will always need them. And then when a parent starts feeling their kids kind of move out into the realm of independence, to sort of try to grab them and pull them back and to kind of control and to make their decisions for them, that is a huge mistake.
Yeah.
And so like our take is that we want to give our children as much opportunity as possible to make decisions now while the stakes are low,
right?
So that they get good at making decisions later. Eiley, our oldest, has been asking lately about practicing, and we've told her, you got to practice everything. And she said, do you have to practice blanking? I'm like, well,
she tests it as much as she can.
She's trying to find the limits. Do you have to practice breathing? I'm like, yes, everything. You did it for the first time. You practiced it. Decision making is the same way. They need practice being decisive. They need practice making decisions. Or another way to think of it is, they need practice identifying other people who make good decisions and then working with them to make their decisions. Because your kids probably be married someday. What they need also, in addition to making their own decisions, is picking out people in the crowd who are good at making God-honoring decisions. I don't want them to be so numb to bad decision makers that they can't identify who not to marry.
Yeah.
And so that all of this is practice. They need practice at it. And so we want to give our kids the opportunity to get good at it while the stakes are low. Because right now, if our kids make a bad decision, the stakes are basically, okay, do a timeout. But as they get to be 15, 16, 17, even be adults, the stakes really get high.
Yeah.
And it's a dangerous situation for them to not have practice making decisions.
I really love the whole practice mindset. And I think, the title of this whole book, Things Above, our whole life is a practice in setting our mind on things above.
Yeah.
We don't ever arrive at, I think, doing that perfectly. And so talking about kids honoring their parents, or even adult children honoring their parents, that it takes practice, and it's something that helps us grow.
Yeah.
We don't really want to stay the same. We want to grow. And so I say that because it relates to a thought that I had and wrote a post about that'll be posted, I don't know, sometime soon. But I was listening to a TED Talk, and her big takeaway from the TED Talk was just be yourself. So if you don't know what TED Talks are, they're just kind of inspirational, tell you an idea. They're trying to spread these,
I think their slogan is something like 18-minute speeches that will change your life or something.
Yeah.
That's probably not it exactly.
They're
Something
well-crafted
like
speeches that are, fun to listen to and usually very interesting on their topics. But
although they are leaning very, very liberal lately.
Yeah, they're starting to change. But this one caught my attention because of the, topic of it. But her big takeaway was just be yourself. And it's
brother. Yeah.
I don't know. I like that. Just that saying always kind of rubs me the wrong way, or follow your heart, or you do you.
You do you.
It's kind of fun to say sometimes, but it doesn't, I don't know, it feels so empty to me. Like, what does it mean?
Yeah.
And so anyway, so I went back to scripture to think, what does the Bible say about just being yourself? And I think in Ephesians, there's a pretty good section of verses talking about taking off your old self and putting on your new self that God created. And so I feel like it's a pretty clear no.
Yeah, you don't just be yourself.
Don't just be you. Unless you're focusing on the new self that God put in you. Yes, just be that. Identify with that. But anyway, so I think it kind of related to your chapter here about obeying. Because as parents, I don't think it's good to just tell our kids when they get to these really big forks in the road, life-changing decisions, just be yourself.
Yeah.
Just follow your heart, baby.
Or when they've disobeyed. I mean, we don't say just be yourself.
Right. We're trying to help them not be what we think. I mean, so the goal is, I don't want to help my kids be what I imagine the perfect image of them to be. I want to help them be what God created them to be, which is someone who looks like him. And it's the same thing that I'm trying to be. We all have that same new man, new self put in us by him if we believed in Jesus for eternal life. And so anyway, it was just kind of some food for thought for me.
So you're saying I shouldn't just be myself? What's your phrase? Like, you haven't published the article yet, but what's kind of do you have an alternative phrase that we could use?
Yeah, what was it? Let me just read it because I'm going to mess it up. Trying to work on figuring out what would be a good way to put it then. Like, what is the takeaway?
So I've got one for follow your heart.
Okay.
Scripture says that the heart is wicked. So a reminder is when somebody says follow your heart, you repeat, oh, you want me to follow my wicked heart?
Yeah. Well, and in Ephesians it says the blindness of their heart.
Blindness
So,
of their heart.
all right, I'll follow it.
My blind, wicked heart. You want me to follow my blind, wicked heart? Wow. Okay.
Yeah, we have some bad advice for each
So
other,
what about the you
okay.
be yourself?
So next time you're told just be you, remember the new you God wants you to be.
That's good. So it could be something like you just be the new you. Mm-hmm. That's kind of nice. Be
just
the new
be
you.
The new you.
Or be, yeah. So that's be your new. Let's see, be the new yourself.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense.
Well, and the nice thing about this instruction that we're given in the Bible is it's not just left at that big, vague, empty thing.
Yeah.
It's followed by chapters of how to be the new you. It's walk in love, be wise with your time, but ultimately, I think it's set your mind on things above. Yeah. Be like Christ. Be like God. So, anyway, that's.
Yeah, that's good. I like that. So that'll be, since I'm the editor, I'll say when it'll arrive. We'll go through editing and then probably be up maybe next week, something like that.
Okay.
So by the time you're hearing this, that article could be published. What is the title going to be?
Just be you?
Just be.
It'll have a question mark.
You? Just be you? Just be you? We should practice that. Just be you? Okay.
We have some videos I wanted to show too that went along with the Obey Your Parents.
Yeah,
It's not actually connected to the chapter in the book. I think this was a separate sermon you preached at Cypress Valley Bible Church about children obeying their parents.
I think it may have been part of their 10 Commandment series.
Okay.
And I did Children Obey Your Parents. Now, I kind of got some flack for it because apparently I was focused on training my sermon, apparently, and I don't remember exactly what I said, but it was focused on training kids to obey their parents, or ultimately obey me, so I kind of was making the exact same mistake that, I just said a minute ago we shouldn't, but anyway, I will say, like, for me as an adult, I do kind of take joy now in honoring my parents and looking for ways to do that. So these videos, I interviewed my dad, and I interviewed our oldest, who was probably, this may have been 3 years ago, 4 years ago.
She's watching this
really
like,
small.
what?
So, what if we did, why don't we do my interview of Dad first?
Okay.
This is my dad. Say hey.
Hi there.
This is Dad. How did you discipline us when we were kids? What was your process? If it was spankings or whatever, what was the discipline like?
I tried never to spank in anger. I always would take a few minutes to think about what the infraction was, and then we'd talk about it. I had an uncle that told me one time, I'd ask him about, how is it to be a parent, and he said, try to remember that they're people too, that they have feelings. Yeah. And so I thought about that a little bit. I thought of my grandpa disciplining my uncle and how he dealt with that. And it helped me remind myself to think of a child as a full-grown adult.
Okay.
Now, how would you be different if little bitty Luke was standing there? You probably would treat him slightly different.
Well, so what? Why did it matter not to discipline and anger? I mean, why was that important?
So I realized as a young parent that I was afraid of being humiliated. I was afraid that my children would be a reflection that would look poorly on me. And once I recognized that, I could diffuse it and stop reacting based on, well, how's this going to look if my child is screaming in the grocery store, for example?
Yeah.
And so, it just helps you sort of redirect, what is your goal in dealing with a child and directing them. And it's really a discipleship process.
Your kids are adults now, and from my opinion, you've done a good job of transitioning into friendship. I know that sometimes it's probably hard. I'm not there yet myself, but I can imagine sometimes that's difficult because there's probably an urge to give more advice than is wanted by the kid. What's some advice for transitioning into that phase and kind of moving into that style?
First of all, beware of unsolicited advice. Parents tend to have trouble stopping this habit of giving directions nonstop. And if you do that to adults, they will start to avoid you. So that's the first thing. Watch your unsolicited advice. Secondly, be careful about being critical. It's very easy to jump on the negatives and just harp on that. Now, the other thing is, I almost always, or I try to, you may have noticed this, say thanks when you want to come hang out, when you want to get me for lunch, when you call up and with your family and say, hey, you mind if we come by tonight? And of course, we're always anxious for that, and most parents are. But the thing to beware as a parent is not to give your child a tongue lashing for not staying on your idea of what you deserve. Again, if you have an idea of, I deserve 7 calls a week, and then you punish the adult child when they do show up or they do call you, you're just going to drive them away. So we should be very careful as adult friends to say thank you and to be kind and to watch the unsolicited advice.
So basically, treat each other like friends.
That's right.
Not do things you wouldn't do to some friend. So any final advice?
The gift that God can give us through having adult children that are good friends is one of the most valuable things in life, and it is worth working on. So if you struggle in this area, I highly recommend that you pray about it, study it, and work hard to develop this kind of friendship because it is a wonderful reward.
So yeah, Dad is very reasonable with how he dealt with us. I mean, it was, I won't say it was a pleasure to be disciplined by him, but it was predictable. Well, it was predictable, and I think that's what kids want. You want predictability. You don't want your dad to be this scary, unpredictable kind of monstrosity. And Dad never was. Dad was always really careful about making sure that we kind of knew what to expect and following through with it, and then doing what he said he would do, enacting the discipline that he said he would. Now, he doesn't remember spanking me maybe once. I remember a few more times than that, but often he actually would seek ways to discipline us apart from spanking. He really was not, he didn't spank us all that much, at least not me. Maybe my brothers had a different experience, but I don't remember too many times.
It seems like different kids, different discipline methods work better on them.
And maybe he was spanking me so hard the memory just bloop kind of came out the front of my face and I didn't remember it. But I don't remember many.
I remember asking, I don't remember which kid it was, but one of ours, would you rather have a spanking or timeout? And they said a spanking. And so I knew right then, okay, we're going to do a timeout then. If you want the spanking more than timeout, then that means spanking doesn't work as well as timeout.
That ain't lining up. Was that your spanking or my spanking?
It was probably mine, and it was probably Eli, come to think of it. I spank him, and he just kind of turns around and looks at me like, are we done?
Is that all you got? Come on.
Okay.
Get a running start, Mama, because that didn't do it.
I refuse to spank harder, so we're going to look at something else to do. Anyway, okay, well, speaking of our kids, you did one with Eiley as well.
Yeah, so in this one, I wanted to kind of compare. It was almost like a performance review for me, because I had done this interview with my dad to talk about how he disciplined, and I thought, okay, let's check in with Eiley to see how her daddy, which is me, disciplines.
So. All right, let's see.
What happens when we get disciplined?
You get a spanking.
A spanking, okay. And so does Daddy use this for spankings?
Yes. No.
No, not that, okay. Does Daddy use this for spankings?
No.
Oh, not that, okay. Does Daddy use this for spankings?
Yes.
Okay, why don't you hold that? Okay, and why do we have to get spankings?
Because I do bad things.
You do bad things? Where do we go when we get a spanking?
In my room.
After you go to your room, who comes in after that?
Dad.
Daddy comes in, okay. But
why are you wearing Mama's glasses? They kind of look like Mama's glasses.
These aren't Mama's glasses.
When it's time for my spanking, we go to my room. We talk about it.
We talk about it? So we don't just do a spanking and don't say anything? We talk about it? Oh, okay. So what do we say? What do we talk about when we get a spanking?
We talk about, disobeying.
Talk about you disobeying. Oh, okay. What do we always do after we get a spanking?
We always hug.
Here, let's show them how we hug. So, thank you. That's so sweet. What does a hug help us remember?
Daddy loves Eiley.
Daddy loves Eiley, yeah. So even though Daddy spanks Eiley, does that mean Daddy doesn't love Eiley? No. What do you know about Daddy?
You love me.
Yeah, I love you. That's right. So even though we have to get spankings.
I kiss you.
You kiss me? Why do we have to get disciplined?
Because it helps us do good things.
That's right. It helps us to do what's right, doesn't it? And do you think that when you get disciplined, it helps you?
Yes.
It does. How does it help you when you get disciplined?
Oh, no.
You don't know? Yeah. Well, I guess we'll see in the long run.
Thanks for watching.
So in there, if you're listening to the audio version, you're not watching the video version, I held up a few different implements from the kitchen when I asked her, does Daddy use this to spank? And so that was sort of a joke to kind of get her linked in. But anyways, boy, she was cute. She still is. She's how old now?
She's 7.
She's 7. She's about to finish first grade, and we're gonna have a summer, and then she'll be second grader. So, so she's grown up. But anyway, that kind of was a bit hard. It's heartwarming to look back at that, to hear that we didn't completely bungle the discipline.
Wait a minute. I can't remember the last time we spanked her either.
I do, because it was really bad. But and she remembers it too. But she also remembers that it was the last time, and it was like 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So she had done something she was so embarrassed about, she wouldn't tell me what it was.
Oh.
But the church had told me what it was. It was something that happened up there, and so I told her, if you just tell me the truth, we may not have to get a spanking at all. And she wouldn't. She just, and so I kind of trapped, and by the way, this is like a parenting lesson. I kind of trapped myself into spanking her because I said, you'll have to get a spanking if you don't tell me. Now, I thought that fear would drive her to go ahead and tell me.
Gamble.
I was gambling, because in fact, I think I told her I'd have to spank her more than once if she wouldn't tell me, because that was a pretty big deal to me. Because at first I thought what she had done was actually pretty bad. And I found out later when the church told me it really wasn't that big a deal. So I felt really bad. But anyway, so she wouldn't tell me. And so I went ahead and spanked her. And then that's been the last time that I spanked her. And I think it probably will be the last time I ever spank her. I can't imagine.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine doing it now.
No.
I mean, even though she's still young, she is so responsive to other disciplines. If she just gets a sense that she's disappointed us, she's immediately
confessing, apologizing.
Yeah, so it's different than the others. I mean, so anyway, so that was fun to see that again.
Yeah. All right. Well, before we go, I think it's cool how we've been highlighting a different song, because we have so many songs and they're all pretty different. So, this one, so there actually is a Things Above song, but we already listened to that.
We did maybe a few weeks ago. That one was called "I'll Set My Mind." If you want to go and listen to that on the website,
it goes really well.
You can download those for free.
Yes, Colossians things. So, but this one is "Lost at Sea."
So on this one, my original, when I started this song got written over a really long period of time. When I started working on this song, I was often interacting with atheists online. So when we were doing questions from atheists, and there were some really great conversations, but there were a lot that were just like, it's so. I just realized, we're talking to people that are so close-minded, and many who really hate the idea of God, and I guess by proxy, then they hate God. And that's kind of what this song is about. Is like, God's offering you a helping hand, and like a drowning man or woman, he's reaching out his hand to you as you're drowning, and you're like, no, I got this, as you like sink beneath the waves. So that was kind of my thought on it, and Yeah, so
Well, I feel like it kind of goes along with our theme today of talking about just being yourself and that
yeah.
advice, because that's kind of where this leads. If I'm
Yeah.
just being myself, then that means I'm always looking inside of me for wisdom and for direction and for help and what to do. And,
Yeah.
And that's just in a really tough situation, that's not going to get you out of it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get out of the raging storm just by being myself. I need help.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, we're not going to find what we need inside unless God has put it inside because we've
Right.
become believers. Yeah, and that's what's so scary about the world right now is, like, when you look at society, for instance, what you see is you see a lot of people trying to peer pressure and even brute force pressure each other into behaving in a certain way. And they're trying to force morality. Now, it's a new kind of morality. It's a different morality than we probably saw 50 years ago. But you see kind of like this brute force approach. The problem with it is you can't make people be moral. That has to come from inside. And the problem is that the heart is wicked and it's deceitful and it's blind without God's light shining in there. And so what in a society, what you have to have, if a society was all atheist, I'm sorry, atheists, I'm gonna tell you my opinion on this. If a society was all atheists, or at least we could say all unbelievers, then you would have a pretty difficult time legislating morality. The reason why our judicial system can work in countries where there are believers is that you've got people with a conscience and the spirit inside of them. And that makes a huge difference. Even one person who has a spirit inside them can affect dozens or hundreds of other people around them, neighbors, friends, whatever. And so if you had a society where that was removed, like say at the rapture, the world would be a mess. And so in society, what we need is we need individuals who have the spirit inside of them, who are self-regulating. But this mess where you've got society trying to regulate morality through peer pressure and brute force pressure, it just makes a mess. I don't think that has anything to do with the song. Did I?
I think it does.
I think it. Okay. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's listen to the song. Let them decide.
I'm the one who fell in. I'm the one who was drowning. You came along and rescued me, and now I see there are those who are drowning too. They don't want to be rescued. They would rather say they're free, lost at sea. But drowning man could stop the hand of a saving friend and choose to stay and fight the waves. What sinking man could pretend that he can stand among the waves as he drifts away? In violent surf the fears will rise, so they hide their frightened eyes. The tide comes down around, darkness drowns. You're the one who walks along on the waves which are so strong. You're the one who calls to me, come and see. What drowning man could stop the hand of a saving friend and choose to stay and fight the waves? What sinking man could pretend that he can stand among the waves as he drifts away? choose to stay and fight the waves. What sinking man could pretend that he can stand among the waves as he drifts away, as he drifts away, as he drifts away.
So we hired a guy named Sebastian to sing that. I really like his voice.
Yeah, me too.
He's a good guy. I think he is from Budapest.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure if I pronounced that right. Some
See,
people say
we're
Budapest.
international. See?
Budapest. And is that in Romania? I think I think he's near the Ukrainian situation.
okay.
I should have asked him.
Wow.
We worked on a song a while back, and I was like, when are you going to get it done? It's like, yeah. So, actually, is he on the other side of maybe he's on the other side of Moldova? My geography's a little hazy, but anyway.
Well, loved his singing on the song, loved the song. And I do want to mention before we go that I do recognize that the Just Be You saying follow your heart a lot of times is said in the spirit of have the confidence to be unique the way God made you unique. It's
but that phrase would be way better. Why not just say that?
But so if we just leave it at Just Be You, I just feel like it's too open for taking a lot of things and really causing people to think a lot more about themselves instead of about God and how God views them and how God wants them to grow.
A phrase like that to me is like an open cargo truck with the words on the side, throw whatever you want in here, but I'm going over the border.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you can take a phrase like that and whatever a person means, it's like an empty cargo truck. You just put anything in it you want. And so anybody from an atheist to a Muslim to a Mormon to a Christian, anybody can hear something in that and think, yeah, well, maybe that's kind of right.
And the sad thing is why we even feel the need to say that to people is because we go around oftentimes and, like some parents trying to control our kids into being
that's true.
The perfect cookie cutter of what we've imagined for them that has nothing to do with God and his plan. So
so like follow your heart. What if what your heart wants is to do some really rotten things? I mean, that's the reality is if somebody is not a believer, they don't have the Spirit in them, and they may have some residual morality that they've picked up from their society if they've been in at least a pseudo-Christian society. But imagine as things get worse and worse, what's in a person's heart is going to be worse and worse. And so there is a place for saying be yourself in a God has talented you kind of way. Like God has given you talents, he's given you time, he's given you resources to use, and be that person that he's made you to be. But if you leave it vague, it is a bit of a scary concept.
So I guess our takeaway is be careful how you use it, and if you hear it, remember that God has placed a new man inside of you, which is it's his Holy Spirit. I mean, that's what we've got. And
so what was the new phrase?
So,
be the new you?
Yeah.
Be the new you. Don't just be you, be the new you. Hey, maybe that could be like a podcast slogan. Don't just be you, be the new you.
Remember, be the new you.
That's good.
All right. Well, thank you for listening to another episode of the Free Grace International podcast, and we hope you join us again next time.
Thanks for listening. If you'd like to find out more about the content that we publish, you can go to www.freegrace.in. We are a support-based ministry, so if you would like to become a financial partner with Free Grace International, you can do that by going to freegrace.in and clicking on support. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to being with you again soon.